probably around there, like 2013, 2014, something like that. So anyway, I set a reading challenge. If you know anything about Goodreads, you can set a reading challenge, which is the number of books that you hope to get through that year. Why is it not working? I'm trying to pull up my reading challenge so I can tell you what number I set and how many books I've read since January. Okay. So my 2024 reading challenge, I said that I want to challenge myself to read 80 books this year. I usually read a solid 70 to like 75 books a year. So I'm challenging myself essentially to read an extra 5 books this year. I don't know if I'm gonna do it because I feel like I'm a little bit behind. But so far, I have read 21 books this year. It has my reading challenge, and then it says I've read 21 of 80. And so I'm just gonna tell you a few of them. I'm not gonna list all 21 because that would be going back to like January 1st, and that's too much. Okay, but I'll tell you the most recent ones I've read. So let me click on the list. I know off the top that one of the books that I'm going to mention is by Carissa Broadbent. And okay, here we go. I have recently read, well, the first book I reread this year because I read it in the middle of last year, and then I finally just went ahead and got the audiobook for the second one because I couldn't get it on like my Libby app and stuff this year. But then I had completely forgotten everything that had happened in the first book. Not completely, but I wanted to refresh her, so I reread the first book, which is called Daughter of No Worlds by Carissa Broadbent. The series is called The War of Lost Hearts. So I'm gonna click on this and then tell you what it's about. So this book is a fantasy romance, and I'm gonna read you the synopsis for Daughter of No Worlds, which is the first book. A former slave fighting for justice, a reclusive warrior who no longer believes it exists, and a dark magic that will entangle their fates. Ripped from a forgotten homeland as a child, Tasana learned how to survive with nothing but a sharp wit and a touch of magic. But the night she tries to buy her freedom, she barely escapes with her life. Desperate to save the best friend she left behind, Tasana journeys to the Orders, the most powerful organization of magic wielders in the world. But to join their ranks, she must complete an apprenticeship with Max Antaria's fairly own, a handsome and reclusive fire wielder who despises the Orders. The Order's intentions are cryptic, and Tasana must prove herself under the threat of looming war. But even more dangerous are her growing feelings for Max Antarius. The bloody past he wants to forget may be the key to her future, or the downfall of them both. But Tasana will stop at nothing to save those she abandoned, even if it means gambling in the Order's deadly games, even if it means sacrificing Max Antarius' heart, even if it means wielding say that there are a lot of really weird and big names like Tasana and Max and Tarlius Fairleone, and it's a fantasy book, so a lot of the names in the book, a lot of the city or like kingdom names, a lot of the like magic rituals and practice and stuff involve different languages. Like it's a very complicated book. So for that reason, I recommend listening to the audiobook. After I got the second one, I purchased the first audiobook. And then, of course, found out that I was pronouncing some things wrong. Okay. As it happens in fantasy, when you're reading it on paper, you just kind of like, I don't know about you, but I'll be making stuff up if I don't know how to pronounce something. So anyway, I recommend the audiobooks for this particular series because it's a fantasy and it can be kind of complicated and confusing, but nonetheless, it is amazing. I am quickly becoming a very big fan of Carissa Broadbent. This is like the third book series I've read from her. The first book series, which made me want to read the rest of her stuff that I fell in love with, was the Crowns of Nyaxia series. I know people are like wishy-washy about that. Some people love it, some people despise it. I loved the Crowns of Nyaxia series. I don't know if I've talked about it before, but if I haven't, go check it out. It's amazing. And I recommend that one before this one because it's a little less complicated. But yeah, I've read 3 of her series so far, and every single one of them have been like nothing but straight 4 to 5-star reads. She's becoming one of my top 5 authors, and her worlds are so rich. There's so much detail, and even though, like I said, it can be complicated due to just something as simple as the names being unpronounceable, in my opinion, it's not hard to understand or follow the storyline of the books. It's very uniquely built. Like, I don't think I've seen worlds quite like hers before. They're very unique, and they're just, even though there is a lot, like they're fantasy romance, and so fantasy tends to have a lot of like battles and stuff, and even though there is a lot of heavy stuff that happens, you know, with character deaths and things of the sort, it still is such a feel good book, in my opinion. I don't know, maybe I'm just morbid, but it's such a feel good series. I am not done with the second one. I'm currently listening to the audiobook of the second one, which is called, let's see. The second book in this series is called Children of Fallen Gods, and I just picked it up today, and I am on like chapter 8 or 9 or so, and with the romance elements, it's like a grumpy sunshine. So Max Antarius is someone that, as these fantasy novels usually go, he's someone that is very feared in their kingdom because he is a fire wielder and a very, very powerful one. He single-handedly won the last war that their kingdom went to, and that's not a spoiler, it's introduced fairly quickly, that he is, you know, he's the baddest of the bad in this, and he's also grumpy AF. Excuse that. He is also super, just like cynical and grumpy, and he doesn't see the best in people at all. He expects the worst from everyone, and when he and Tasana first meet, he is quite mean to her. I mean, he's not cruel, because there can be some books where the introduction of the lovers, especially if it's an enemies to lovers, it's like they're cruel to each other. He's not like bad, but he's not nice to her. was a slave for most of her life and was mistreated for most of her life and went through horrible things for most of her life, she still came out of that a little ray of sunshine and, you know, just wanting the best for everyone around her. And she tries to take care of, she's very nurturing and tries to take care of people. And so it's a grumpy sunshine fantasy romance, and it's just so good. It is so good. I was not bored at all, because sometimes if I have to reread a book so that I can you know, get immersed back into the world to continue the series, I'll be bored to tears because I remember certain things, or it's just not as enjoyable as the first time. That can happen sometimes. But with this, I was as invested the second time I read it as I was the first. It's so well put together. I highly recommend. And I'll read you the synopsis of the second book, because that is what I am currently at this very moment reading. So, again, the second book is called Children of Fallen Gods. And it says, no war can be fought with clean hands, not even the ones waged for the right reasons, not even the ones you win. Tasana bargained away her freedom to save those she left behind in slavery. Now bound by her blood pact, she must fight the Order's war, and Max is determined to protect her at all costs. But when a betrayal tears apart Ara, Max and Tasana are pushed into an even bloodier conflict. Tasana must gamble with Raychel's power to claim an impossible victory, and Max, forced into leadership, must confront everything he hoped to forget, his past and his own mysterious magic. All the while, darker forces loom, far darker even than the Order's secrets. As Tasana and Max are ensnared in a web of ancient magic and twisted secrets, one secret remains. What are they willing to sacrifice for victory, for power, and for love? Like I said, I'm about 9 chapters into the second one. Loving it. It grips you right away. This world, in my opinion, it grips you right away. So if you love magical fantasy romances and you don't shy away from darker, heavier topics like slavery and things of the nature, you'll love this. Next thing on the list that I have been reading. So actually, I read this series right before reading Daughter of No Worlds, but it was a reread for me. I like rereading things, and back in, I'm trying to pull it up if it'll let me. Okay. Back in 2019, I read the Harbinger series by Jennifer L. Armentrout, or I read the first book at least. I don't know if the other books were all published, because Jennifer L. Armentrout typically publishes books like every 6 months or so. She's really quick, she's really quick with her publishing. So I probably didn't read all of them in 2019, but I started the series then. And I just recently reread the whole series, which is 3 books, it's a trilogy, right before I started, Daughter of No Worlds. So the first book in the Harbinger series is called Storm and Fury. It's another fantasy romance. That's my era. I'm in my fantasy romance era, but honestly, that's like my favorite genre. Anyway, pretty much. So, okay. Meet Trinity Morrow, a girl with an explosive secret whose hiding place has just been discovered. 18-year-old Trinity Morrow may be going blind, but she can see and communicate with ghosts and spirits. Her gift is the reason she's been hiding for years in a compound guarded by wardens, which are shape-shifters who protect humankind from demons. If the demons discover the truth about Trinity, they'll devour her to enhance their own powers. When wardens from So this world that Jennifer L. Armentrout created is very much, if you like angelic kind of fantasy books, you would love this one. This is full of Nephilim, which are essentially angels. It's full of like Nephilim, Trinity's dad. Well, I don't know if that's a spoiler or not, but a lot of these, I won't say that, but there are a lot of archangels featured in this book, and then wardens are essentially gargoyles. You know, you see those statues of the gargoyles, and they've got wings, and they've got horns, and the long teeth. That's what wardens are. They just call them wardens in this. So there are these super, like, tall, over 6 feet men that they have a human skin. They can walk around in human form, but when the time comes for them to fight off demons, they shift into these huge gargoyles, and with like impenetrable stone skin and long claws and big wings and all this extra. But their job is to save humanity from being overrun by, you know, the demons that escape from hell. It sounds like crazy, but you know, it's fantasy, baby. So Lucifer makes an appearance in these books. He's actually, I love his character. He's so funny. And then Trinity, who is the main lead, as mentioned in the synopsis, she can see ghosts and spirits and communicate with them and such, and she often helps them pass on to the afterlife. But there's this one ghost that she calls Peanut, that is this teenager that refuses to go into the light, essentially, and he's one of my favorite characters. He is basically like Trinity's best friend, and even though he's a ghost, and he's just so bizarre and funny and cute. And then the lead character, Zane, I would lay down in the middle of the road for Zane. I love him. He is one of my top book boyfriend baddies. He's not number 1, but he's one of my tops. I love him. I love his character. I love how Trinity's character is very much quirky and impulsive, and she never thinks anything through. She never has a plan. She's very chaotic all over the place. And Zane, which is the love interest, he's very structured. He's very organized. You know, they're complete opposites. Again, just like the last book, it's not Grumpy Sunshine, but they're just complete opposites. So Trinity drives him up the frickin' wall. But his dedication to his mission as a warden, because he's a warden, but also to her, even though she makes him want to pull out all his hair, is just so freaking cute. It's so cute. I love their relationship. It's not even though it's like an angels against demons book, it's not very heavy at all. It's not one of those books that you read and you need to take a break frequently, or you feel heavy after a certain chapter or whatnot. Like, it's pretty light reading, but that's coming from someone who does a lot of reading in the era or in the genre of fantasy, so it's not heavy to me, but it might be to someone else if you're like creeped out by, you know, demons and things like that. But it is, I believe, I gave all 3 books 4.5 stars, and which is why I reread it. I was in a reading slump. I felt myself going into a reading slump, and typically when that happens, when I'm slowing down, but I want to keep reading so that I can fulfill my goal, which this year is 80 books, I will reread something that I know I loved in the past. And so this reading slump, it just so happened to be the Harbinger series. I read all 3 in the span of like a week and a half. So good. They're just so good. I love them. And I recommend as well. So from the 2 series that I've mentioned so far, series over Carissa Broadbent just because it's lighter reading. It's not so heavy. It's not so complicated. It's not so complex. It's very easy, very light, very feel good, very cute. But if you are an expert fantasy reader and you don't mind, you know, really heavy, thick plots and, you know, slightly more complicated reading material, then I would recommend Carissa. Anywho, I'm trying to see how long this video is. Okay, so something else that I recently read, I just got done reading A Soul of Ash and Blood, which is the 5th book. It's another Jennifer L. Armentrout book, and it is the 5th book in the From Blood and Ash series. So I'm not going to read the synopsis of the 5th book because it would be a spoiler, but I'll read the synopsis of the first book so that way you can figure out if you want to read the series or not. The first book is called From Blood and Ash. I really enjoyed this series, and the synopsis for the first one says, a maiden chosen from birth to usher in a new era. Poppy's life has never been her own. The life of the maiden is solitary, never to be touched, never to be looked upon, never to be spoken to, never to experience pleasure. Waiting for the day of her ascension, she would rather be with the guards, fighting back the evil that took her family, rather than preparing to be found worthy by the gods. But the choice has never been hers. A duty. The kingdom, the entire kingdom's future rests on Poppy's shoulders. Something she's not even quite sure she wants for herself. Because a maiden has a heart and a soul and longing. And when Hawk, a golden-eyed guard, honor-bound to ensure her ascension, enters her life, destiny and duty become tangled with desire and need. He incites her anger, makes her question everything she believes in, and tempts her with the forbidden. A kingdom, forsaken by the gods and feared by mortals, a fallen kingdom is rising once more, determined to take back what they believe is theirs through violence and vengeance. And as the shadow of those cursed draws closer, the line between what is forbidden and what is right becomes blurred. Poppy is not only on the verge of losing her heart and being found unworthy by the gods, but also her life when every blood-soaked thread that holds her world together begins to unravel. So, battery warning. So, to break it down in more layman's terms, Poppy is essentially a maiden that she can't be touched. She has to wear a veil 24/7. No one can see her real face. No one in the kingdom can talk to her. She is secluded to a part of the castle. Like, she has an entire wing of the castle to herself, and her guards stand outside her door all the time, 24/7, because she has to be protected. Because there's a prophecy. Jennifer L. Armentrout loves prophecies. There is a prophecy that the maiden, who is Poppy, will save the entire kingdom, apparently, because they are, of course, evil, dark forces trying to take over the world. And so, because she's the maiden, she has to be protected, and their way of doing that is the reason the measures that I just gave: no touching, no looking, no talking, nothing. She can only talk to her lady in waiting and her guards, but even that interaction is supposed to be minimal. And so she is miserable because she is, I believe Poppy is like 19 or so in the first one, and she's lived her whole life this way, and she is just craving experience. She wants friends, she wants freedom, she wants to be able to go where she will and do as she pleases. She wants romantic love. She feels trapped in her life, in her singular room in the castle. She wants to be let out. And so say in February, maybe. Yeah, I believe in February. It was either the end of February or the beginning of March, one of those. So, the next thing that I recently read, I'm not going to touch anything from January, but I just read these like the second week of March. I was needing a break from fantasy romance because that is 98% of the books that I read, and I needed a palate cleanser. So I was like, I'm gonna read a contemporary romance, and then I was like, oh, that's boring, I don't want to do that. And then I was like, I'm gonna read like a mystery thriller, and I was like, oh, I don't want to do that. And then I came across these Mafia romance books, and I am not someone that reads a lot of Mafia romance, but every single time that I have, I've loved every single one of them. So I just finished a couple weeks ago a series by Paige P. Horn, and the series is called Bones. It is a spicy Mafia romance. Oh, all of these books, every book that I mention is spicy. The levels of spice vary. Some of them have very light spice, but it's not a fade to black. All of them have intimate scenes in them to some degree, okay? So if you don't like spicy books, you're not gonna like any of these. But Genesis is the first book in this Mafia romance series. This whole series is hot, okay? And so even though I did thoroughly enjoy this series, I gave all of the books 3 stars, because I'm just a very tough critic. I have to feel it. It's just a feeling deep in my heart that lets me know this is a 4 or 5 star read. And I didn't, even though, again, I really enjoyed it, I didn't feel that. So I gave all of these 3 stars. But anyway, the synopsis for the first book, Genesis, is: how old were you when you committed your first crime? Or have you ever? I was only 13. The smell of moonshine still drifted in the air as Johnny and I turned around to watch the house and the man inside it burn. A noise from behind causes us to look back, revealing a girl with hot pink socks, black boots, and wide, curious eyes. She wasn't supposed to be there. She wasn't supposed to witness what me and Johnny did that day. The truth is, I fell for Bexley Walker the moment she promised she'd never tell. But our time together was short-lived, for I am who I've always been, a man on the wrong side of the law. I thought I could change for her, but we can't outrun the truth that lies within us. I am my father's son, born to be a criminal. Now, because of me, we're both in danger, held against our will, tied and locked in a room together. We are forced to relive the love we once shared. So, this book opens up letting you know that Danny, who is the point of view I just read in the synopsis, his name is Danny. He is a part of the mobster crowd. He's like the right-hand man of the mobster leader, the top dog. So he's, anyway, Danny and Bexley were kidnapped by enemies, and they're held in the woods, deep in the woods in this cabin, and the entire book is just one big flashback of their journey from when they met to now, what led to now them being locked in the cabin. So you're introduced, they're tied to chairs, they're talking to each other, and then Danny's like, do you remember when we first met? And then the second chapter is a flashback to the scene I just read in the synopsis when Danny committed his first crime been like this. They fell in love with each other when they were 13, although I think Danny is 2 years older than her. He's either 2 or 3 years older than her, so she was either 10 or 11 and he was 13. So yeah, it's just their journey from the beginning to now. And then that's the first book, and I'm not going to say the second and third because it would be a spoiler, but I did enjoy these. And if you like mafia romances and you like spicy mafia romances, I think you would enjoy them as well. I think it was actually really well written and really well put together, because sometimes when it comes to books that have to do with a lot of flashbacks, like the entire story is told in flashbacks, it can feel very overwhelming, or I personally can feel a sense of disconnect because I prefer to be in the present. So I want to start from when y'all are 13 and that be present day and go forward, right? That's usually what I prefer. And things that are told via flashback, like I said, I feel disconnected from the characters, from the storyline, because there often tends to be jumps. Like, they'll have a flashback from when they were 13, and then there'll be a flashback from when they were 19, and then there'll be, right after that, a flashback from when they were, like, 15. Like, it jumps from age to age, and I don't always like that. I want it to be in chronological order, but I was thoroughly surprised by this because it was, even though it was one of those jumpy flashback kinds of things, it was very well put together. I did not lose interest a single time in either book. For all 3 books, I was hooked. I was in it. I was like, what is gonna happen? I need to know. I wasn't bored. I wasn't like, okay, I'm tired of these flashbacks. Any of that. I was invested. So it seems like I should have given it more than 3 stars, but again, I'm tough with the stuff like that. So even though for me it was 3 stars, I think for most people, and from what I saw from the reviews for other people, I think it would be like a 4 or 5 star read for the majority of people that read it, especially if you're into mafia romances. I recommend them. I've had a really good reading year this year. The last book video I did like this, I think I was telling y'all, like, oh my god, this reading year has been a struggle. Like, I was reading nothing but like 2-star reads that year. This year, I don't think I've read a single book that I downright hated. I've thoroughly enjoyed pretty much all of them, so I recommend all of these. And then the last recently read series, because I tend to read, I don't typically read standalones too much. I always read full-blown series. So why is it not working, bestie? Okay. The last recently read book, it's called The Bratva Bride. It's another mafia romance. So it was my 4th mafia romance book in a row, and even though, because you know, the Danny and Bexley ones, and even though I really enjoyed it, I was like, okay, I'm tired of mafia romance, and so I didn't. Instead of starting the second book, I started the second book, The Daughter of No Worlds, in the Daughter of No Worlds series by Carissa Broadbent, which is what I mentioned at the beginning of this. So anyway, this one was a 3-star read. Typical. Like I said, that's like my average. So you know a book is good if I give it more than 3 stars, but it's a mafia romance, and the synopsis says, the Bratva rule Las Vegas. The Casa Nostra rule New York City. What happens when they merge their families? A new king and queen of the Mafia are born. Ileana Volkov and Arturo Di Luca have a long road ahead who are all like hot and badasses. But anyway, a rival mafia gang called the Casa Nostra that rule New York, and they are Italian. They're the Italian mob. They reach out to Ileana's dad because they want to form an alliance, and one of the ways to form an alliance in this world is via marriage. So Ileana and Arturo, who is second in line in the Italian mob, he is going to take over from his father because he's the oldest, and he's going to rule the New York, gangsters. They get engaged to be wed as a part of this alliance, and even though it's very like insta lovey, like they both see each other and they instantly fall in love with each other, at least visually, it still is a romantically kind of a slow build up because there's other things going on, and it's like split 50-50 between being plot driven and being character driven. So it's not all centered on the romance, and there are other factors and elements, which is why it takes until like a chapter like 24 or something until they actually get together, like substantially get together. And I like that because I love slow burns. I actually prefer slow burns. So when I read a book that's very insta love, like they see each other and they're like, I want you and no one but you and you're my everything, right away I can be like, I'm bored, like give me something else. And like my toxic trait is I'll read a slow burn, and if it is a series, let's say Mariana Zapata is the queen of slow burns. Let me just tell you right off the bat, if you like slow burns, read her books, read them. But I've literally read a book before, and it was a series where it was such a slow burn that these characters did not get together until 85% into the book. Like the book was over and they got together. And it was beautiful. I loved it. It was angsty. It was it was everything. And then the follow-up book, the second book, what do you call it? The prequel or the sequel. The sequel book was about these same characters, and like halfway through I was bored because I'm like my toxic trait is once the couple and the slow burns get together, after a while I'm like, that Judge Judy meme where she's like banging on the table and then she's like, I'm like, okay, like I'm bored, like give me something else, like I need something, I need that tension, that's where the fun is. So insta love, I say that to say insta love is not typically my thing, but I really enjoyed these books because again, it took a while, even though physically right away they were into each other, it took a while for the emotional connection to develop, and I enjoy that. So yeah, those are all the books that I have currently read. I deviated from my norm and read 4 Mafia books these past couple of weeks, and all of them were top notch in my opinion, and they were spicy, they were hot. I do plan on finishing the Brought for Bride series with Ileana and Arturo because I did enjoy it, but I needed to go back to my fantasy romance, so I think I'm gonna finish out the Daughter of the New Worlds series because I believe there's 4 books in the series. I think what I'm gonna do is just go ahead and knock that out these next couple of weeks, and then I'll go back to the Brought for Bride series and finish that. So those are all